This is a video series with, I hope, enough information to allow me to debug our Mitsubishi Delicas when they invariably break down in Mongolia somewhere. So what we have here in this video is we have my spare transfer case from the parts van and the front axle. And we're going to use this to just introduce Mitsubishi's SuperSelect four-wheel drive system. So in this van, the rear wheels are always driven through the transfer case. And so when we choose 2H, this is two-wheel drive or rear-wheel drive. When we shift forward to all-wheel drive, 4H on the stick, then what this will do is this will start to drive this front drive shaft to the front axle with a little bit of give. And this particular mode can be used under any traction situation at any time and without serious consequences. Once we go forward to 4HLC, four-wheel drive, at this point, the front drive shaft will drive at exactly the same speed as the rear drive shaft, which gives us a little bit more traction than all-wheel drive. The downside of this is that this can be very destructive to the vehicle in high traction situations, like on asphalt, or when turning very, very tight radiuses. You can really feel the fact that the rear axle and the front axle are being driven at the same speeds. There can be a lot of torque and stress buildup in the system. And finally, 4LLC is identical to 4HLC, except now at this point, the drive shafts will be driven at 1/3 of the speed, 3 times the torque. So this is much slower, maximum 30 km/h mode. And it relieves a lot of stress from the transmission. So when you're treating your Mitsubishi like Jeep, this is a handy way of backing off the stress. For most of these modes, this transfer case, this whole system is shift on the fly. So this means that you don't actually have to stop in order to engage all-wheel drive or four-wheel drive or go back the other way. In my experience, I can't make it work at anything more than about 30 km/h, but it's still very handy if you see a bit of mud coming up to be able to start locking the vehicle up without stopping. And the exception to that is 4-low, where you can only get in and out of 4-low by putting the transmission in neutral and pushing it down into 4-low, and the same for getting back out of 4-low. The consequences to the shift on the fly system is that when you push forward into a mode, that mode has not necessarily been implemented. So there are switches all throughout the system. There's 6 on the transfer case and 1 on the front axle. And these detect where we've put the stick, where we put the shifter here, and what mode has actually been implemented in the gears. And the state of these switches are primarily used to drive indicators on the dash, the SuperSelect indicators, to show you what mode you've actually got in. Because there's a bit of a trick to driving these and getting them in and out of various modes. So we're going to go through a quick scenario for a V6 Delica in rear-wheel drive, 2H. We start the engine, and the intake manifold on the engine will start to develop a vacuum. And this vacuum will be redirected to the vacuum solenoids. The black switch on the transfer case, don't worry about the details, it's just an example. Black switch on the transfer case will drive current through the solenoids, which will direct the engine's vacuum to this shift actuator, which will cause the front axle to disengage. The switch will detect that that's actually happened. and about 5 of these switches will cascade up into the dash and will be used to figure out by the system if you're actually in two-wheel drive. And if we switch into all-wheel drive, at this point now the black switch will be off, which means the vacuum solenoids will be off, and the default position for them will be to pull the actuator back out, which will then lock up the front axle, and the switch will detect that that's happened, and then all these switches will go up and will tell you on your dash if you're actually in 4H at that point. So that's a very high level idea of what's happening, and now we can go into a more detailed video on how all this actually works.